Hey yogis, this is Mia from How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. This week, Adrienne and I went to Houston, and Adrienne got a chance to sit down with Alexandra, a studio owner and yogi who's from Australia. Super cool. I think this is our first Australian interviewee. So you're going to listen to the episode, and then we're going to jump in with some commentary. Enjoy.
Namaste, yogis. This is Adrienne with How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. I am here remotely in Houston, Texas, with my friend Alexandra. How are you this morning?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here.
I know. Welcome to Houston.
Thank you. Mia's doing a workshop today, so she won't be here for the interview, but she'll be able to help me out with the commentary when we're finished.
Awesome.
So, Alexandra, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Charles-Kersey. I just got married, so...
Oh, congratulations. When did you get married?
Just in March.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But I'm Australian, so I'm not actually from Houston, but I came to Houston and loved it and never left.
Nice.
So, what was... anything else you want to...
So you're from Melbourne.
I'm actually from Sydney.
From Sydney, that's right.
Yes, we were talking about Melbourne before.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're from Sydney.
I am.
What brought you to Houston, Texas?
Well, actually, I came to America and I was in Las Vegas because I have spent most of my life before yoga as a professional dancer. And so I've gone all over the world, and being in Australia, I did a lot, and I'm very grateful, and I loved life there. But I was about 27, I think, at 2014, I came over to America. So I went to Vegas. I spent a couple of years there being in a bunch of shows, having a great time. And then I wanted to not be in a desert anymore.
Yes.
So I came to Houston. I had an opportunity to be performing over here. And then I visited and I loved it. And so I've stayed.
Wow. Yeah. So what kind of professional dancer?
Yeah, so I grew up being a ballerina and doing musical theater.
That's what my daughter does.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. So I did all musical theater. I did a lot of cabaret. And then later on in my career, I did a lot of burlesque.
Oh, fun. Mm-hmm. So you've got like the sex appeal. I can already tell. Like you kind of exude a little bit of sex appeal. Whereas I'm kind of just like, hey. I'm just Adrienne. I don't really have a whole lot of sexual appeal. That's okay. I'm not very...
You look fabulous and sexy, don't you worry.
I've been up since 4, so who knows what I look like at this point. I don't really care.
You look like you woke up at 8. It's fine.
All right. So let's hear, have you always been a yoga practitioner? Like, what's your yoga origin story?
Yes. So being a professional dancer, I've been using my body a lot since I was very, very young. And then yoga came into the picture when I was in my early 20s. Before that, I had done yoga and I always thought, may as well just be in a dance class.
Mm-hmm. What kind of yoga before that? Was it more like stretchy yoga?
Yeah, I'd done a vinyasa a couple of times, things like that. But interesting enough, I got to about 23, 24, I think. And there's just a lot going on in life. Mm-hmm. And I needed a little bit more structure, I guess. And I ended up starting Bikram, which of course is like, now everyone's like, oh gosh. But yeah, I started Bikram back then when it was really at its peak. Mm-hmm. And I loved it because at that time I needed that structure and I needed that discipline. And I needed to, this was when still classes were 90 minutes long. And I needed that force and that challenge, and having that very, very strict structure was really helpful. And I used to just think, oh gosh, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Exactly. So, I definitely looked at that as a very healing process. I needed it for life stuff. It gave me a lot of structure, but it was also helping. I wanted something else to exercise back then, and I don't like running or things like that. And social media wasn't as big. Right. And so that was kind of my, this fits. I feel good. This helps with my stretching for my performance. But also, that challenge and the heat, of course, back then you're like, oh, good, it's helping me sweat. And
right. I'm detoxing.
I
hate that.
Yeah. So, but hey, that's what we all, so many of us did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I definitely started like that. And then I actually I was doing five days a week.
Oh, yeah.
And very, very disciplined. And then I actually started doing a lot of meditation with a beautiful teacher of mine who's actually was over in Australia and now actually is in San Diego.
Oh, nice.
And that got me on this rabbit hole, and I found Kundalini yoga. And so I used to, there was a point in my life there where in Sydney, I would get up really early, do 90 minutes of Bikram, and then shower, get changed, and then head on over to 75 minutes of Kundalini yoga. So I just went into my morning was of opposites.
Wow. Well, I'm interested.
Fantastic.
You said you were looking for structure and discipline, but you were a dancer. And so was there structure around your dancing?
Yes, but I was already working professionally at this stage, and I was having a lot of fun being a young 20-year-old in Sydney.
I can imagine.
And so I was, performing in all the clubs, and I,
Staying out late
and having a great time and knowing all the people. And so yes, my dancing still had structure and discipline, but it was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And just life in general. I was a young 20-year-old that had been traveling and then came back and lived in the city now. And, it was fun. It was what my 20s I was glad to have.
That's great.
Yeah, I definitely needed some stuff. And I think as well, I had with that competition, well, at that stage it was, competition in who gets the job.
Right.
But even before that, when I was younger performing, it was actual competitions of performing.
Right.
And that came with it a lot of mental things and some injuries. And I think that getting into that discipline helped me in a way rearrange some of the thought processes that I had and helped me sort of connect more to my body, because although being a dancer, it sounds very strange, but although being very connected to your body as a dancer, there was a lot of other mental things going on as growing up that then I had a lot of disassociation as well. So yeah, coming into that structure was a way to be like, oh wow, like I'm really feeling what's going on and I'm here and I'm present and this is really tough, but I can do this. And so when my outside world, even outside of dancing, just life in general is a little chaotic and yes, fun, but still chaotic. It's like, oh, well, I have this base.
Right. And like auditioning for different performances or different dance groups, like they're going to want a certain look, right? So it's not only is it your performance level, but it's also the way that you look. You're judged upon that.
I lost a big job once because I was an inch too short.
An inch too short?
Yes. So that does... And maybe it didn't affect some other performers out there in the world, but speaking for myself, like, although I was very, very resilient because I'd been doing it my whole life, it mentally does take a toll.
Oh, I can imagine.
I had some things said to me when I was in very young times where, it really messed up my mind and it messed up my body image and it messed up my self-worth. And so I was really great at faking things, but deep inside, it was like, oh, you're always overweight, you're always this. And I mean, gosh, I wish we had our real eyes on, because I look at photos now and I'm like,
oh, I know, right?
Oh my goodness, who was I?
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of, I was a cheerleader in high school and did sports in high school, but never had a connection with my body. Never. And from a dance standpoint, even my daughter is in dance. My other daughter's in dance right now. She's a freshman in high school and she's coming home and she's learning all these amazing things. And I'm like, I love what you're learning, but are you learning how to properly do it in your own body? Because I feel like even in gym classes, when they come home, they're like, well, look at my push-up. I'm like, that's not a push-up. I'm like,
your form is terrible. You're about to blow out a shoulder.
Exactly. And I'm looking at her going, you're going to get injured. And there doesn't seem to be that recognition of body awareness for coaches a lot of times to tell kids like, hey, your form is bad. It's more like, oh, just do it. Yeah. And like having those kind of issues with, you're applying for, or you're auditioning, I should say, for different positions, for different jobs at different dance studios, different clubs, different programs, projects. And that does take a toll on you emotionally when you're not seen as the dancer that you are, or the person that you are. And not taking that personally must have been hard.
Well, and Yes. And you do, if you really want to be a performer like you do, you get so resilient to rejection. And, but I think when I was younger, young teenager, I had some eating disorders and, you know, some just emotional stuff. And yeah, it was because you're never good enough.
Right.
And so you're from, 10 years old, I was programmed like, you're never good enough. You have to be better. Now, of course, the people doing it probably didn't, there's no but ill will. Like I know that they didn't mean to, but that's what it was. And back, it's different now than what it was.
Totally different.
Like I had a shoe thrown at me once by one of my teachers. Like
yeah. Why the hell did you throw a shoe at you? What'd you do?
I know, we were probably being silly or something. But yeah, there was like, obviously the shoe didn't hit us, but yeah, the shoe was thrown. And, in performing, like it was, you would get a little back of the hand tap, smack on your leg if it wasn't high enough, and which is totally fine. I mean, I think sometimes now in some places things are a little bit too baby and a little too precious.
Right. It's like everyone gets a trophy. Everybody gets a prize.
It's like, let's find our extreme that we had and the extreme now. Let's find that happy middle.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so definitely there was a lot going on, and emotionally, and I was great and I did do really, really well, but you do have to become really good at rejection. And I think that when I first started meditation and yoga, it was like, oh wow, I can live in a different way in my own head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have to live in this kind of suit that everyone else thinks that I should be in.
Yes, yeah. And from the outside, I think most people just were like, oh wow, you just seem a lot happier, or oh, you seem really bright and vibrant. But inside my head, it was just such a nicer place to live. And when I say that, I'll back it up with, it wasn't easy.
Right.
And it was actually quite painful to realize some of the things that was going on in my head, and some of the things that I was saying to myself and had been for, 10 years, 15 years.
Right.
And I think that, it definitely, that pain and that struggle and all the processing of, okay, what was I programmed with? What did I go through? The yoga and meditation just really actually helped me work through it, even though it was yucky at some points, but the end result was I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah. It's really interesting that I love the quote, the words you speak become the house you live in. Yeah. Right. And it's the same thing in our heads. And it's not our parents' fault. It's the way that culturally we were brought up. Right? Yeah. We were brought up to be the best. We were brought up to be perfect, to get perfect grades, to have all of these achievements, but for the lack of person. Yeah. Right? It wasn't about us. It was about achieving something. Yeah. It was a goal, and it was something that was, not a personal connection with in some ways, a shape or form. So you said you were doing Bikram and Kundalini every morning for ever. I can't believe that. That must have been awesome.
That was awesome.
I would freaking love that. Yeah, I would have loved that though.
I know, life was good. I would then go and jump in the ocean in Bondi and have a swim and then go about the rest of my day. So yeah, I was definitely very blessed to have that time.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for probably about maybe a year or two. And then I moved over to America and I kept going to Bikram. I was in a bunch of shows in Vegas, and over there, after a little while, I actually did my teacher training, and then I started getting more into vinyasa.
So what style teacher training did you do?
So I actually did a hot yoga training that was similar to Bikram, but was not Bikram. So it definitely had it was a little bit more, I don't want to say flow, and people think vinyasa flow, but it was definitely more connected in their movements, had a few more options in there for hips. And so I was definitely, I did that first teacher training on all of that. And my teacher trainer actually was a chiropractor. So we did a lot of really deep alignment based stuff, which
that's amazing.
Loved. And I'm very, very grateful for. So that was that. And then we also did a section of yin yoga, which I then also loved. Tiny bit of vinyasa in that training, but then I subsequently went on and did more trainings in vinyasa.
Were you like when you found yoga and did the teacher training, were you like me? Like I dove headfirst into any training I could get into for the first few years. It was like,
yes.
And you always leave a training going,
I'll do another one.
Yeah. And you leave a training going like, I went through 200 hours and now I know nothing. Right. Like you don't, like I came out being like, whoa, like I just scratched the surface. Yeah. And there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to explore.
Yeah,
definitely. And finding that, trying different types of yoga, I think is awesome too. I think. So did you have Kundalini when you were in Vegas or just the hot yoga?
Not in my training. I would go to Kundalini when I was in Vegas. There was actually, when I went though, it was a very old traditional way of Kundalini where you had to kind of find who a teacher was and they would do it in their house. And so you would just turn up to their house and be like, hello. And they would hold the class. But yeah, some really great times over there. But I ended up being part of the studio that I did my training with, and they
taught there.
Yeah, I ended up teaching there as well. But yeah, they had the hot, they had the vinyasa, they had yin yoga, and they had some other stuff like fitness stuff too. But yeah.
Oh, good. And so then what brought you, so you said you got a job in Houston dancing?
Yes.
And then you moved here.
Yeah. So I was in Vegas for just under 2 years. And yeah, I was performing over there. Plus then I ended up started teaching yoga over there. And then, I came over to Houston in early 2016.
Okay.
And I was performing over here, and then I also started teaching at a bunch of different studios and a gym and things like that.
How was that, like that transition going from, because I've moved now being a teacher in Chicago and then being a teacher in San Antonio. Did you notice like a difference between like Las Vegas yoga and Houston yoga?
Yes, I did. And then it was interesting because I'll pop in there as well, that then I went back to Australia for a few months and I started teaching back there after a few years of being over here. And then that was completely different again.
Oh, I bet.
So I feel like, yes, every city has that slightly different feel of what they're doing. And from going from teaching here in America to going to teaching in Australia, and then to come back to America, I was like, oh my gosh, everything's That's so different.
So what were some of like the key differences that you can remember, whether it's like, was it the style, the way people talked, or the way that you would hold the space?
Yeah, both,
everything. Everything.
I definitely, I'm very grateful that I took that time to go back to Australia for some family things and taught. And I feel like I really learned a lot that then I actually brought back. And when I opened my studio here in Houston, I have incorporated a lot of those things. And so, yes, it was, how are you holding the room? What's going on in the room? What's going on with the music? Also certain verbiage, different ways of having essential language. And the one thing that I'm really grateful about as Sydney when I went is it just reminded me to slow down even in my vinyasa practice. And I feel that in my experience, and I know it's not true of everyone, but like so many in Vegas and here in Houston, like everyone talks about moving with their breath, but then they're moving so quickly and I'm like, my lungs aren't even full yet.
Right.
Like can we slow down?
Right.
So I'm usually like the slowest person there. But in saying that, when I first started teaching, like, no, of course I was going with everyone else. So I taught a little fast too, that I realized. So I think that going back to Australia, it really humbled me. And I was like, oh, I want to relearn some stuff because these teachers are incredible. And I know that I'm a very good teacher. And also I always want to be learning and growing. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to really think about what are the benefits here? Like why am I slowing down? I'm not going to just do something because, but even in my own practice, it just started making more space. Yeah. And I was like, this is nice after how many years of practicing in a certain way. And you're like, oh, so that's definitely, So yes, everything's different. And also it's all good. Yeah. Like wherever it is, exactly. I know some people come to our studio and they're like, oh, it's so slow. And I'm like, that's okay. And also some people, I'm just like, this isn't your studio. Well, that's not in a bad way, but just, that's okay. But this is...
that's part of the process, right? And I think that that's the biggest thing that I've learned through my yoga journey is you'll go to many different studios and you may fall in love with one and one just might not be your style, but there should be yoga for all.
Exactly.
There should be yoga for all. And having the ability to go from like Bikram, and Kundalini is a very disciplined practice from what I know of. I've never gotten to take a Kundalini class.
Oh my goodness. It's so fun and weird and wacky. And
right.
Like
the weird and wacky is like, that makes me a little uncomfortable. Right. Yeah. And I've done like Kundalini practices, but not in a Kundalini studio. So like I've done, you know, breath of joy and like different breath of fire, different breath styles that are like, what am I doing? Flopping my body around like this. Yeah. But then it's like, wow, this is amazing. You know? So I'm curious about that, the Kundalini, but then having the Bikram and then going into kind of this hot fusion, hot power, hot yoga fusion kind of world. And, you know, kind of what I would deem as like Western white girl yoga, right? Like the basic girl that is, you know, because unfortunately in the US specifically, it's expensive. What is it like in Australia, yoga wise? Is it expensive? Is it a white person, like a rich person's sport, or is it?
I mean, everything in Australia is expensive.
That's what my dad said too. Yeah. He came over here for like a month and everything was like, do you know that if I bought that in Australia, it would cost me this much money? I'm like, great, Dad.
Yeah, everything's expensive in Australia, to be honest. So I think that it's definitely relative. Okay. Like it's the same as here, but you know, like here as well, like they have, you know, centers, rec centers, YMCAs, things like that, you know, you can probably have it for more affordable or more access. And they would, just like here, there's always someone doing free events. And, but yeah, very similar. I do think that, over there, and again, this is just from what I experienced limited. Yeah, definitely some great stuff. Like they still do their best to, you know, be really connected to stuff, but I don't know. I'm kind of,
it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah. It's like, it's just like here, you go to some studios and they're pumping music really loud and it's like, how much of a sweat can you get? Let's get those calories off. And then, I hate that. Yeah. And then you get to, you know, like our studio where we don't play music and we don't talk about any of that, but you know, we also try not to push too much of any particular philosophies or, you know, we don't in our practice because we're trying to make it really accessible to anyone. Right. And we do know our demographic. Like we have, you know, we're right here in Houston in an area that there's going to be a lot of people that have other religious beliefs. And I don't want them to be turned off from moving their body and getting centered with their heart and their mind just because we might be over spouting philosophy or yogic things or omming or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I know I went on a bit of a tangent there, but
no, it's fine.
I think that, you know, just like here, we can find our super traditional yoga and then we can find the in-betweens and then we can find the I'm here to party yoga and I'm just here for the workout. And I definitely believe that, you know, that's the same over there. Yeah. But again, great stuff.
I know. So you said, so you moved here in 2016 and then tell us about your journey as going from yoga teacher to yoga studio owner.
Yeah.
I need to know about that.
So I was teaching for quite a while. And then, as I mentioned, I went back to Australia for some family things. I was there and then I realized that I didn't want to stay. And I actually loved my life in Houston a lot. It was a big deal. Of course, I go through a lot as an Australian, we don't have just a free pass to come and live and work in America. So it's a big process and a big commitment to be like, okay, am I going to go back and stay on my visa and continue, you know, doing that process of my working visas and things like that. And I thought, well, if I go back, I'm going back because that's going to be my home. Like this isn't, I'm having fun in life. Well, yes, I'm still having fun in life, but it's definitely going back to be like, hey, this is going to be my home and I want to set life up. And by that time I was like 31, nearly 32, I think. And I just thought, well, I come from a family of entrepreneurs and I thought, well, if I go back, I want to go back and really do something. And I want to start setting up more of life in a way that, you know, I can actually take a day off and still get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
As being a performer my whole life and then performer yoga teacher, it was like, you know, if you don't work, you don't get paid. Right. And there's no stability there.
No, none.
And I thought, well, if I'm going back, I'm getting older. I've had a fantastic life and everything, which I still do. Right. But yeah, I wanted to be like, okay, I'm going to come back with even more intention. And I wanted to, you know, kind of do what my grandparents and my mother did, which was, create businesses. And I thought, I can do this. I know how to do this, and I'm a hard worker. And I wanted to create something in Houston that I felt maybe just had a little missing spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I've always said, like, I want my own yoga studio one day. But I want a yoga studio that is kind of more cooperative with the teachers, so that the teachers are kind of more in the ownership or involved in it in some way. Because I feel like where most yoga studios that I've witnessed and I've worked for or worked with, they fail because they're not focused on the teachers. And the teachers are really what brings the students in.
Yeah.
So you said that you found like kind of your little niche in Houston. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we actually have a non-heated studio.
Good for you.
Yes. No heat. We keep it at a comfortable about 73. So it's very neutral. And that's if it's hot out or cold out.
Right.
It's just very neutral. And we do yoga and meditation. So we have dedicated meditation classes. We don't just tack it on the end of it. Well, obviously we incorporate it, but we don't just, we do a meditation, but really it's just 10 minutes at the end of a class. No, we have dedicated meditation classes, again, keeping very neutral. We do a lot of sound bath. So I have trained a lot of people in sound healing and therapy.
I love that.
And we do a lot of yin yoga. So our whole studio is more of a gentle focus. So yes, we do vinyasa, that hatha vinyasa, but it's slow and it's simple. And our classes are kind of, each teacher will have a little bit of their own flair, but I do have a semi-set sequence.
I love that.
And that's so that, you can come as a never doing yoga before and feel good, be like, wow, okay, I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern. Like this is a familiar pose. And then there's a little bit of enough flair that people are still having a bit of fun in it and it doesn't get stale or old.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I definitely come from that. I will admit, like, I am a strict business owner.
Good.
So
as you should be.
Yes.
Because we know some yoga studios open with yogis.
Correct.
And some people open as business people.
I opened as a business person.
I like
which
it.
Definitely ruffled a few feathers at first with some of my first teachers, and they are no longer around.
Yep.
That
happens.
And they're fantastic teachers. So if any of them hear this, I still think you're a great teacher. Obviously, it just wasn't a good fit for us.
Yep.
But yeah, my team now is absolutely incredible. They are such an amazing team, and everyone's on board with what the vision is, and I try my best. I really look after them.
Great.
I don't do what you said where you're like, you want them to have ownership, because I think that can get messy.
Exactly.
So it's a fine line of, okay, these are the rules, this is the structure, here's the reason why. So I try to be really transparent with all of my teachers of like, this is why I'm asking you to do this. Mm-hmm. Here's the rules. They've never changed.
That's
so
awesome.
That's one thing, like this is how it is, and that's it. Like that's just it. Because I do believe in consistency with businesses. It doesn't matter what you're doing or what business, it's all about consistency. But I also try my best to really support my teachers. So, I know that I've done some workshops of like hands-on assisting that I'll put on just for them.
I love that.
They can come to any workshop I do, they come for free.
That's great.
I will try to support them in other little ways. So I do my best. I'm sure everyone, thinks that they can do more, which I'm sure I could, but I definitely try to have them understand the whys of the studio.
I think that's really important. Yeah,
and they are important because they are why people are coming. And, I've taken a bit of a break from teaching this year, and I just do workshops mainly, and but I've taken a break from my weekly daily classes, and they have just been incredible, and they're just going strong, and people still love them. There's actually a lot of the teachers there that they did my teacher training, so they're actually trained from me. So people will be like, oh, that person said something and it reminded me of you. And I thought, yes, because they learned off me.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like it makes me happy. Like if I hear a teacher that picked up a cue from my class, or if I pick up a cue from their class, I feel like in yoga, there's no patent sequence, right?
Correct.
There's no way to trademark anything besides the name of your studio, I guess. But like as far as sequencing is concerned and language is concerned, it is our duty as teachers to try things and experience other classes to learn from other people.
Exactly. And that's, it's like, if it works, why do you feel like you need to reinvent it?
Right.
Like if it works and it makes sense and it feels good for the person that's experiencing it, like you don't have to feel like you need to reinvent it just so you don't say that because you heard it from someone else.
Right. Or like what kind of ego are you teaching with them? Right. Because then you're trying to perform. Right. And you're trying to, I have a lot of conversations with like middle school teachers and high school teachers and elementary school teachers, even about yoga. And the idea of like being a school teacher, it's a tested environment, right? It's a controlled environment. It's limited. Whereas being a yoga teacher, it's like boundless and limitless. You can see your students and go, they can do anything. Yeah. And I can help support them in doing that in whatever they want to do, right? And that's kind of the difference I've seen between like regular teachers and yoga teachers is when you can embrace that boundless energy someone has that you can help kind of hold space for them and get them to where they need to go. So what year did you open your studio?
We opened in December 2019.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
If I had a crystal ball, I would do it the same.
Now I worked for a studio. I moved to San Antonio in the end of March 2020. So right after COVID shut the world down. And the studio that I was going to work for had just opened a week before COVID shut the world down.
Yeah.
So
3 months.
Yeah. So how did you handle all of that? Like, how was the first couple of months? Like, how did you prepare? Did you teach most of the classes? Did you have other people teach?
I taught a lot of the classes. We had a lot of classes when we first opened. And, you know, anyone that is opening or in the future opening a studio, my word of advice is still have a good amount of classes. I went to my extreme and I had people saying, oh, don't do that. But I was like, I'm doing it anyway. But I'm still happy that I did. I think that we showed people that we had a lot of value. I definitely did overwork myself. I was doing probably like 80, 90 hours a week with, you know, managing everything, teaching a lot of classes, very trained. But yeah, we did a lot of classes. I taught a lot. I did have teachers also teaching, you know, a lot of classes too. And then yeah, we were doing good. We like started with a bang and then, the world got shut down and it was like, oh my goodness, or what am I doing? What do I do? Because I actually started this, like I didn't have any big loans. I just was very, very smart with the money I had saved up. And, I was like, oh dear.
Oh my gosh.
So I definitely I had to kind of, in my very slightly burnt out space, I was like, okay, let's reassess because I need to make this work. Like I've just opened, we have like our whole space is like 2,200 square feet, 2 different rooms, a lobby area, obviously. So there was a lot that went into it. Yeah. And so we jumped straight onto virtual within about a week.
That's impressive.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have as many classes, so we kind of changed all that around. And we just did our best. I was a studio, though, that chose to, as soon as we were able to open without the threat of being fined. Right. Because that wasn't very nice. Right. Or pleasant.
Right. Right.
So I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I opened. And I'm sure that there was probably people that had some judgments about that. And I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to go bankrupt for your judgment.
Right. Well, plus the fact that you knew that the service that you're providing is something that during COVID people actually really needed. Best, yes. It was like a necessity. Yeah.
We have a over 1,000 square foot yoga room and we started and we were only letting 8 people in. So, you know, not to be controversial, but I kept thinking the whole time, even when we were only on virtual, it's like, hold on a second. The amount of people that can go to Walmart and Costco, all these big grocery, big box. And I'm like, but yet I can't have 5 people in this open space where no one gets near each other. So yeah, as soon as that green light happened, I was like, done. First day open. We only had 8 people though, so that people felt comfortable. People were happy. They liked how we did everything. They liked, you know, how we were going. We very slowly, obviously as the year and the next year, we very slowly increased our numbers. And even to this day, we have in our yoga room a max of 22, 24 if someone turns up that didn't sign in, and we'll squeeze them in. But we do that not because of anything over the last couple of years, but just because we want a space where people know that they can come and they're not going to feel overcrowded.
Yes, I agree with you.
They're not going to be completely mat to mat, which, you know, I've had times back in the day where I'm like, your mat is literally over my mat.
I know. Or being a teacher and trying to like walk through the room and you're like wide-legged forward fold. Be careful when you come back up again.
You're like, and everyone sweep to the side.
Exactly. I used to call, when I lived in Oak Park, I used to call it the Oak Park swoop.
Oh, yeah.
The studio was really tight. It was like swoop your head around somebody's ass.
Now we'll go the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible. I remember those days too of like, we opened up pretty quickly after COVID when we were allowed to.
Yeah.
And I remember going in and teaching in a mask and having only 6 bodies in the room and they're all spread out and they're wearing masks. And I'm like, it was so hard to breathe and teach that way. But it was like, I knew that we had to do this. I knew that we had to provide the space for people to come and alleviate their own suffering.
Yeah. And we had it where so we had some teachers that weren't comfortable coming back. So I let them still do virtual only classes. And some teachers that were more than happy to come back. And so that was great. And I definitely ran my studio as hey, we're not going to tell you what to do. And we just want you to respect everybody else.
Great.
And that was I still stand by my choice of how I did that, because we never had any issues. And we had everyone respect each other for whatever choices that they chose and how they presented themselves in the studio. Yeah. And we had everyone be very loving and caring. And anytime someone wasn't feeling well, they didn't show up.
That's great.
And so there was never, I was like, I'm not going to be I'm not being this
COVID cop.
Yeah. I was like, well, what do I say here? But
yeah,
I'm trying to be nice. But yeah, and I didn't. And I just made sure my teachers, I was like, look, what do you feel comfortable with? And, you know, let's just remember, like, let's be respectful and let's try to, I definitely, the only thing I policed in a way was I didn't allow people to get on conversations about it because I actually said, like, you know, once you walk into this space, it's a sanctuary and the outside world isn't existing anymore. Just look after yourself, be respectful of others. Like, we're here to do good for your body. And so, yeah, so I was like, no conversations. Of course, some happened and whatever. And, and people's feathers get ruffled no matter what you do. So
no, I know. You're never going to please everybody.
No one can get pleased. But, you know, we never had, you know, I want to quotation mark this, like, outbreaks.
Right.
Nothing, because everyone was just really loving and caring. And I think that most people really that were from, you know, that kept coming, they just loved having a space that it was a sanctuary.
Yeah.
And it's like
a safe place.
Like
or like a comfortable space.
A comfortable space. It's like whatever you need to do. You know, people are not going to get in your business. People aren't going to sit right next to you. Like, you know, choose your own adventure that makes you feel good, because we are all different and we've all had different things happen to us to make us get to the place or the thought and belief that we have. And it was like, hey, whatever that is, like, I just respect you as a person. So come as you are.
How many yoga studios or fitness studios around Houston were shut down after COVID? Did you notice a lot of studios close?
Oh, like close?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think there was like 9 or 10 in San Antonio that closed.
Yeah. I'm not sure on the numbers, but I definitely know that there was quite a few that shut down, and I don't think
reopened.
A bunch of them reopened. Yeah.
That's what breaks my heart about COVID is that, you know, a lot of different areas of occupations were affected,
for sure.
But I feel like yoga studios specifically were hit really hard.
Yeah.
A lot of people lost their local studio because of COVID, because they couldn't reopen, they couldn't pay the rent or whatever, you know. And I've known studios that even got sued for not being able to pay the rent that they had during COVID.
Yeah,
you know,
it's horrible.
A lot of studio owners went through a lot of horrible times. I mean,
I was really grateful. My landlords, they were happy to work with us, and it was probably good because at that time, actually, we were one of the first new tenants in the building as they were doing renovations on the building.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a really old building. We were some of the first new people. So they were really good at working with me, because I'm like, look, like, I'm going to be transparent. Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
So they actually were really good, and I'm very grateful to them. So if any of you are listening, thanks.
Thanks, landlords. We really appreciate it. We need our yoga.
They really did help out, and even in the subsequent years have really helped.
That's great.
Just in certain things, because of course, you know, I negotiated my lease when the economy was absolutely booming.
Yes.
And it's like, guys, let's get realistic. Like, this isn't what's going on anymore. So they've been really great, and I'm definitely grateful about that. But yeah, it's heartbreaking to hear some of the people that didn't get more understanding, and who knows what that was. Maybe the landlord was a sole individual landlord, and they were also struggling, and
you just don't know. You just don't know.
Exactly.
But I think
it definitely sucks.
It's amazing that you started a yoga studio. So what was what was kind of like your image or your mission or your kind of goal in opening your studio? Like, what did you want to accomplish?
I wanted yoga and meditation to be for absolutely anyone. And we say that all the time, but then we're putting on, and no offense to any teacher that does this, of course, it's just, but we say we want it for everyone, but then you're blaring music that's your favorite music, and you're doing things that most bodies maybe can't do, but because you've been practicing a long time, you can, which is totally fine. And there's a place for all of that. I wanted my entire studio to be a space that we just don't do that. Like, we really make it accessible for all. And meditation wise, we come from a very neutral space, as I had mentioned before, where we don't follow any specific lineage of meditation. We do mindfulness, we do some energy body stuff, and we do a lot of sound bath meditations. But everything is from that neutral space where you could be a very, very religious individual and still come to one of our meditation classes and feel completely comfortable with what's being said and guided. So it was definitely, I wanted a studio that, for those people that maybe look at a hot yoga studio and is like, oh, right. Or look at a studio where there's a lot of people taking selfies in the mirror, which again, no problem. People love that. But I also know that there's a big demographic of people that's very intimidating for.
Yes.
And, I wanted to create a space where it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how old you are, what size you are, what ability you have, like mentally where you're at. Like, you can just come and be like, okay, I can find somewhere, and if I come to this class and I end up sitting down for half of it, I know that I'm still welcome here.
Yeah.
And there's zero judgment, because we actually encourage that. Like, hey, where are you today?
Yes.
Like, maybe today is a day you need a sit down day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I love about teaching and taking classes as a teacher, because I get a lot of times when I go to take a class, I've already taught 2 classes or something. So my body's tired. Even though I'm not performing or doing the entire sequence, I'm still energetically holding space, and that's tiring. So a lot of times if I'm taking a class, I will stop.
Yeah.
I'll take child's pose. I'll lay down. I'll put my legs up the wall.
Yeah, just take a breath.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just chill the fuck out for a second.
Yeah.
And then, like, I notice that other students are like, oh, she's laying down. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And so I invite that in.
I love
our
whole
it.
studio. Sit down, lay down, take a child's pose.
I love it.
Chill
and I
out.
think it's interesting too, because you talk a lot about the religious elements of like not wanting to kind of have people fearful of like meditation or yoga being this like religion, right? And we've had conversations with other people on our podcast about this, and really understanding that meditation is a connection to self.
Yes.
Right? And whatever religious beliefs you have, you can still meditate and have the same religious beliefs, and nothing's going to hurt you.
Correct.
It's not going to take away. It's actually going to add to your spirituality.
Yeah. Yep. And that's exactly, our whole space. Like, we don't have any deities anywhere. We don't have any Om symbols even. Like, we have a bunch of plants.
Yeah.
You walk in and you're like, there's plants everywhere. But yeah, I just really wanted it to be like, hey, like, you have this very strong belief system, and that's fine. And you can still come here, and we're never going to say anything or do anything that's going to contradict that or make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Because like, whatever someone's beliefs or spirituality, religion, whatever, doesn't matter. It's not my business, really.
Right.
But I want you to be connected to your heart and to yourself, and I want you to move your body, which is this vessel you're living in right now for this life, and you want it to be good, and you want to breathe well, and you want to be connected, and you want to be in the moment. And that's definitely where I was just like, I want more people to benefit from that. And our demographic is awesome, because we have absolutely everybody.
I love that.
You're going to a class, and we've actually had people before, and they're like, oh my gosh, half of the people here are men, and some of them are like older men. And we're like, yes, that's fantastic.
Yes.
They're like, so guys love it, because then they come and they don't feel like, oh, I'm here with a whole bunch of skinny young girls that are in Lululemons taking selfies.
Right.
Excuse me to name drop that, but you know what I mean.
I know. And, I feel you though.
Yeah, but instead it's like, oh wow, we just have, I'm so grateful for the demographic we have because
it's huge.
It's huge. It's just, it's literally anyone.
Then that's the hardest thing that I've seen in studios is like, especially from a standpoint of like, socioeconomics, right? Like if you think about where people live and where the yoga studios are, and most of the time they're in like white suburban neighborhoods and they're expensive and they don't feel comfortable for another body to come in that doesn't look like the white woman, right? And like it just makes no sense to me that that's how we're taking it in the US, but that's culturally how we have taken it. Yeah. Whereas like it was started in Africa. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it ain't ours, people, you know, we need to share this with others. And I love what you're doing with it. So like, tell me a little bit about, so you started the yoga studio, you're here, you're doing teacher trainings.
Yeah, I do teacher trainings. We just had one over summer. I'm taking a little break at the moment. We worked out that our fall time to do teacher training is probably the best. Yeah. And I also don't want to churn out too many yoga teacher trainings. Again, absolutely no judgment to anyone that, you know, people do like 4 a year. But because I get very hands-on with, I mean, I'm the lead teacher and yes, I have some of my other teachers do stuff, but I put a lot into it and a lot of energy, and I don't want it just to be a big money-making, let's churn these out. So I only do one a year.
I love that.
So taking a little bit of a break for the rest of this year, probably do another one next fall.
I think that's the way it should be. Like, I think a lot of people that own their own yoga studio will do 3 or 4 teacher trainings because it's a great cash inflow.
Yeah,
like
and some people are great at it. Like, don't get me wrong, like go for it if you can do it in your energy. But I just know for me, like,
me neither.
I came to a place where I stopped burning myself out, and so for me, one is good. One is where I put like everything I have into my, you know, the people that are coming to me, and I can give it my absolute all. Whereas if I just know myself, if I'm doing more than one, I'm burnt out. Like this year, I actually like it bordered on doing over one because I actually finished last year's teacher training in, I think it was like the end of January or first week of February. Well, then I did one in summer.
Oh, gosh.
And even that it was a lot. And I just realized like, oh yeah, like if I'm going to be true to myself, which is what I teach, this is too much. This isn't where I want to come from, that really honest, heart expanded place, because it is too much for me. And that's just me personally. And
I agree with you.
The good thing is it's my studio, so I get to choose.
My studio, my rules, right? I like it.
So
now I've led teacher trainings and co-led teacher trainings for years as well. And I noticed, like, especially during COVID, we were doing virtual trainings. So we were doing like back to back to back to back to back. And I'm like, it's a lot, because when you're in a very vulnerable space when you're on your yoga mat, right? And then you are teaching someone else about yoga in their own personal space, and they're trying to develop their own voice, and you're helping them. It's a lot. And it's not a job placement program.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Where people think, oh, I'm taking my teacher training at this studio, so I'm going to teach at that studio.
Yeah, and it's like, unfortunately, no. So don't get me wrong, I have a lot of teachers that have gone through that have ended up, but they have to go through a whole mentorship program. They have to, I'm like, this isn't a guarantee.
I love that. So tell me, when you said mentorship program, that is like one of my biggest hot buttons is 200 hours is fine, but a mentorship program, I think, is critical in some areas.
Yeah, so I only offer it to the people that I see potential to work for my studio. So I am very selective. When they do it, I don't actually charge them for it, but it is, you end up having to essentially teach a class, and we label it as teacher training class, even though you're technically a 200-hour certified teacher, but it's just easier for the general public to understand. Yeah. And you don't get paid for that class. So that's sort of that write-off, is you are teaching a class. It's a different than a normal we don't change our schedule ever. So our set classes are our set classes. We put on an extra class that's not it's obviously not a prime time spot, but you are expected to teach that. And I mean, I've had some people teach that class for, 3-4 months until we're like, okay, I think you're ready now. Would you like a class? And some people are like, no, I want more time. Or some people are like, yes, I do. And some people have done it for only a month or two. But so what ends up happening there is whether myself or one of my lead teachers that I might designate, they have to teach a class, they record it, because we do all of our classes still via Zoom as well.
Oh, nice.
Right? So we do virtual and in person still to this day. And they record it, and then I will watch it, and then I give them feedback.
That's great.
And if anyone's ever had feedback from me that they're listening, they know I'm very truthful.
You have to be, though.
Yeah, which of course sometimes doesn't go down as well. But I've found that everyone that has gone through my training and then does a mentorship with me, they actually love it. And they're like, give me more. And I'm like, okay, cool. Because they know that I'm not saying what I'm saying to try to be mean, or I'm not saying it to hurt your feelings. I'm saying it because I want you to be awesome.
You're coming from a place of love.
Yeah. And
it's
just
coming from a place
that
of love. Yeah.
I don't, sometimes I'm not very good at putting it in, what's it called? Like a compliment sandwich.
Oh, a shit sandwich?
Is that what it's called?
A shit sandwich where it's like the nice, good stuff.
Super nice. Here's your BS.
Yeah.
And here's something super nice. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm just like,
no, I don't do that.
I've gone through your class. Here's all your notes. Let's talk about this. And then I'll be like, and then I'll also tell you your good stuff. But I'm just like, here it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's not, and maybe you just had an off day, but I'm telling you of just only what I saw from this class.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you my personal feeling. I'm just like, this is what I want you to do better at. This didn't read. I didn't understand what was going on. This sequence part didn't, whatever it is, but I'm just very honest.
That's good.
But again, my teachers, I mean, so obviously selfishly, I think I have incredible teachers.
That's awesome.
And I think that going back, tying it into what we do is in our studio, we tell people a little more than at other places. And, a lot of people, I think, that essential language has become, don't teach people how to do a pose.
Oh my God.
Whereas for us, I focus on how can we have essential language, but I want you to tell them what's happening.
Right.
Tell them what could be squeezing, what might be stretching, what is, feeling tight and firm, what is relaxing. Now, everyone's body's different, so we try to use very welcoming languages. This could be here, or you might feel this here. Hopefully you might feel a stretch here, but giving more of, can you squeeze this? Can you do this with this joint? Can you hug this in with this muscle? So we definitely give a little bit more information, which a lot of people, especially when they're newer, they love it.
Oh yeah.
Because they're like, oh, thank you for actually teaching me how to do this pose, instead of just saying, and warrior two, now breathe.
Right. Or saying like, or like the idea of yoga is it's an energetic exchange on the mat. Like there's a transaction that's happening between the teacher and the student, right? And if you're using flowery bullshit stuff, students aren't listening to everything that you say. They only hear 10 or 15% of what you say anyway. So if you're sitting there and you're saying stuff like, describing it instead of directing it.
Yes.
Like directing the energy, right? Yeah. And like squeeze your glutes.
Yes.
Right? Lengthen your arm. Like I find it interesting.
Grow, extend your spine.
Yes.
Grow taller. Whatever. Right. Yeah. Instead of like, and now feel the energy. Right. I'm exactly. Touch the ocean, and then the sky will rain down on us, and then sniff a flower. And you're like, I love that. And also, I don't know what's going on. And someone that's new, which we have a lot of people that come to us when they haven't done yoga in a while, they've never done yoga, and they come and like that just goes in one ear and out the other.
Oh my God. Especially when you look at like a right foot and a left foot or right arm, they're like, I don't know where I am.
Like, I'm sorry. What is an arm? What is a leg? Like, so I definitely think that, we come from that. Give more information, but that's useful.
Yes.
Useful information, again, to keep someone in their body. So yeah, I know we got on a bit of a tangent then, but
no, it's great. I don't mind tangents.
Yeah.
Mia always gets me back on schedule, but I'm a tangent queen. And I think it's
Me
interesting because
we left alone together.
Exactly.
Like,
we're in trouble. Sorry, Mia.
Here's the adventure.
Here's the adventure we're going on. No, but it's important because I feel a lot of times we had a conversation with another teacher last weekend about trauma-informed yoga and how that is like a big, like hot word that everyone's talking about. And I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, and I'm going to be rude here to this woman who went through all this trauma-informed yoga training. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? We all have been through trauma. And she's like, let me explain it to you this way. From a mental health standpoint and from a place of, you know, being in a medical facility or treating mental illnesses or physical illnesses, utilizing trauma-informed language works. Yeah. But in a yoga studio, it's a little bit different because when my friends started saying, I'm a trauma-informed yoga teacher, they would say stuff like, see if you can try. Maybe you can do this. Try and do this. And I'm like, what if I can't? Then that hurts me.
Yeah.
Then I'm in my head because I'm looking at someone else who might be doing it. Whereas I will say to students, option.
Yeah.
Here's an option. You want to vary it up? You want to try something different? Like I don't say modification.
Yeah, we try not to use modification. That word, we do a lot of like supported. Supported. Yes. Here's a supported side plank, not a modified side plank.
I like that. I'm stealing that from you. Supported. Yeah, I'm totally stealing that.
Yeah, supported. Because again, it's like, it's not that you need it modified because you can't do it. It's just because this is just another option.
Right.
That's the same as us. We might say, here is, you know, maybe you'd like to do this, or maybe today you'd like this.
Yeah, that's
both are fantastic.
Good choices.
You know, we'll use a side plank because obviously it's everyone's favorite pose. But whether you're doing a full side plank or a supported side plank, either way, can you squeeze your glutes for support? Can you press down in the bottom hand and grip with the fingers? Yep. Stabilizing your arm. Yeah. Can you hug your navel to your spine, feeling really connected there through your core? And can you keep your gaze steady? So it doesn't matter what version you're doing, like we're just giving that, hey, this or that. Both are great.
Yeah, choices.
Everything's great. Yeah, so we actually use the word supported.
I love that. I'm stealing supported.
Steal it, take it.
I think it's amazing.
Take it,
share it. I'm sharing it. San Antonio, watch out.
Yeah,
you're going to be supported.
Everything.
So one of the things that we didn't get into that I kind of want to go back to is, so when you had said that you had started your yoga journey, and you started really connecting with your body, when did you notice it off your mat, and did other people notice it off your mat?
So I'm going to be very honest that some of my biggest places that really mentally helped me was actually through my meditation practice. So with my yoga, yes, to get back into that physical, but my meditation,
the big why.
Yeah, the really big, like, oh my gosh, look at how my brain is programmed and I don't like it, and how can I reprogram it to be better? So I definitely started noticing that in general, I started having better boundaries because I actually didn't really know what a boundary was, to be honest, in my early 20s. And I started being able to be like, actually, I am going to set this boundary, and I was really good at advocating for myself. So I've always been quite a strong personality. But I think the boundary thing, I just kind of didn't really know. I think because growing up, I definitely had, what do they call it? There's actually a word for it. There's actually a word for it, but it's when you sometimes have boundaries, but sometimes those boundaries are not there. So it's like, it's yes and no. So you're never really sure. And so growing up, you know, obviously my parents did their best, but
I like that. Like my parents did my best. I told my daughter the other day.
Yes, like, which is going to happen, you know, with my kids. But it was definitely like, okay, sometimes this is the boundary, but then other times it's like, oh, that boundary doesn't exist. Oh, wait, suddenly it's back again. So I think that, I know there's a word for it, but I can't think of it. But so I think I definitely was able to get some better boundaries for myself and to stick with them. I was also, one of my biggest things for me personally was actually learn how to be nicer to myself. Yeah. Like that was incredible. Like, and just incredible when it started happening, and incredible to see how horrible I used to be to myself.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Like,
I
so
realized
horrible.
that too. Yeah.
To have that realization of, oh my gosh, what did you used to say? And I remember a couple times I would cry being like, oh my gosh, my teacher's asking me to tell myself I love me. And I'm like, ugh. Couldn't even say it because I'm just like, wow, how far from the truth that is.
Right.
And so it was this slow process. But yeah, I started being kinder to myself. I started having better boundaries, which then those boundaries ended up changing some of my friends. Some people ended up leaving my life and others came in. But the ones that came in, I mean, most of them are still in my life now.
It's pretty amazing the depth of a relationship that you can have with the connection of yoga.
Yeah.
Like we've never met. Yeah. We've never, but like I feel like you're a sister from another mister. Yeah. Because we have this love of yoga, we have a respect for each other. We have this notion that what we're trying to do is just be better humans. Yeah. And share that with others. It's not a secret. Like this should be a subject in school.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree.
Like
and that's one of the things in our studio. We say so many times, like we stop people a lot in Tadasana, just standing, and we'll say, close your eyes. So our big thing is, as soon as you get to stand, just close your eyes, go inwards. And, instead of having too much philosophy or anything, a lot of times we'll just be like, can you say something nice to yourself in this moment? Right? And that little practice is just, oh, wow. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It could be like, I'm glad I got up today. Good job. Yeah. Or, wow, I really did well on that vinyasa. Or, I really like my hair. Like whatever it is. Yeah. It's like, just say something nice, which we've actually had a lot of people and a lot of our members that say, oh, it has helped them. And it has been these great reminders just to feel good a little bit better and make it a little easier to be nicer to yourself.
That's one of my my husband and I always say this, like if you're taking on a role or if you're doing something with another group of people, try to leave the situation better than the way you found it, and I've never had, in my experience, and knock on wood, but I've never walked out of a yoga class and been like, that's the worst hour of my life. Even if it was a shitty yoga class.
Yeah, you might be like, that wasn't very good, but you're still like, I'm glad I went.
I'm still glad I went, right? I still I still was breathing. I still moved my body. I was still connected inward. And if anything, if I have a shitty yoga class, it's more about that my mind was in the way, that I wasn't able to push that away.
Well, I've definitely had some though that I will say like they weren't very good, and you're like, how can I make sure I never do that in my class?
Exactly. And it's so interesting to me that like yoga is something that is so basic, right? It's like, and even getting into like religious comparisons, like the Yoga Sutras are these beautiful threads that are out there for people that are basic, like I call the sutras like the guidebook to not be an asshole in life. Yeah. Right. And if you look at every religious,
quite simple.
Yeah, it is. It's like, here's not how to be an asshole in life. Like you can be a nice person.
Don't lie.
Yeah. Which is every other religion. Every other religion has the same exact thing. Don't harm people, you know? And it's like, there you go. If we have that commonality is being a human. Right. And being a good human and your best human self. It's just crazy to me when I see that, though, when people are like so into the idea that yoga is something that it's not. Yeah. Right. That it's like, it's either it's too hard or it's too soft or I'm not flexible enough.
Yeah. Or I can't touch my toes, so I can't go yet.
Right. Yeah. And the fear of walking into a studio, too. How do you make people feel? Like, how did you make that space feel comfortable for people?
Well, I have my rules in place.
Right.
Which if any of my teachers listen to this, they'll probably be giggling. But yeah, like you have to be standing there at the front desk, which is right when then people will come into the door and you're the first thing that they see. And of course, there's this big open lobby with couches and chairs, and we have a little library section that you can sit and read a book and tag your name on it if you want, so that you can, because we don't want you to take the book, but you can tag your name so you can come back and keep going. And
I love that.
But yeah, my teachers, like a big thing is like you need to be that smiling face. I'm sorry that if you've had a bad day, of course I don't want you to be fake, but also you can't be miserable and put your bad day on others. So which none of my teachers do. They're fantastic. But yeah, it's that, hey, how are you? And if you've seen them before, can you remember their name? Like I'm really big about like, say someone's name, be connected to them. But yeah, we have definitely for brand new people, we have a welcome speech that I've ingrained in my teachers.
That's great.
So that people can, when they first come, there's no questions. They know where the bathroom is. They know what to do with their belongings. They know they have to turn their phones off, and they are not allowed to bring them in class. This is where the rooms are. This is where you're going to be today. This is what, blah, blah, blah. And it's very concise, and that should be the same every time. And so then people go, oh, awesome. I just had all my information. Great.
Yeah. It's not rocket science, right?
No, but I think that, and I've even been to classes, and I walk into a studio. It's my first time. They know it's your first time because all of our software systems tell you it's someone's first time.
Exactly.
For anyone listening, we know it's your first time. So
yes.
if you get this, you can be like, well,
yeah.
But they'll be like, okay, welcome. Thanks. Great, you're in. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea where I am going. Where do I put my stuff? Where's it's not clear where the yoga room is, or I can see there's two. Where do I go? What? And I mean,
or if it's dark, a lot of studios are dark.
You're like, where
am I going?
What do I do? So I think we definitely try to have that. Hey, let's. I would rather give people slightly more information than less. Yeah. Yeah, make them feel welcome. Tell them that here's the blankets you can use to make your knees a bit more comfy. And yeah, so I think that's, again, as a business point of view, it's give that consistency and give a little bit more information so that people feel like they're not got questions or are feeling confused.
Well, also it's like you said, the one thing that I've heard you say a lot today has been structure, consistency, right? Making people understand that when they come to your classes, there's a semi-set sequence, but that predictability or that pattern is comfortable to us.
Correct.
Right? We are creatures of habit. We like patterns. We like repetition to a certain degree, and being able to greet someone. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into yoga studios being my first time and not even been spoken to.
Oh God.
Not even been spoken to. And it's just an immediate feeling of, what?
I'm not welcome here.
Yeah, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah, I just paid you all this money. What? I'm not even, you can't even look at me and smile.
Right. Or you get into a yoga teacher's class and they're doing the entire practice at the front of the room and they're not paying attention. Yeah.
For us.
Well, and during COVID, we had to stay on our mats because we weren't allowed to walk around.
Or in virtual, you're like, okay, I have to do
it all.
And I'm like, oh, and talk at the same time.
I know.
Kicked our own butts.
Oh my God, it made me so fucking uncomfortable because I'm like, don't look at me. Just listen to me, because I don't want you to try to look like me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about my body. But virtually, yes, we had to do that. And then even during COVID, we had to stay on our mats and do it. And I felt like a lot of newer teachers that either got their certs right around 2018, 2019, right? Then COVID hit. They weren't practicing hands-on assist. They weren't practicing moving in front of them or moving around the room or kind of holding space in different ways. Yeah. And it used to drive me crazy when I'd see them up on their mats and I'm like, that's your security blanket. Yeah. I'm like, get off the fucking mat and get in their line of sight. Yeah. Get into their space.
Yeah. So I have a big one of don't do something. If you need to demonstrate a little bit, totally get it. Yeah. I know that, a couple times I've had a teacher be like, you'll see that I demonstrated a lot, but it was because I only had two people and they were both new and they just and I'm like, that's okay. That's a different situation. Right. But if it's a normal class, you should not be demonstrating that much. No. Yes, there's options to do certain things, but you should not be. You should be looking at your class because you might be saying things that you don't even need to say.
Exactly.
And how do you know that if you're doing the whole class? Because you can't see them.
No, and your voice is changing.
Exactly, right? Because you're facing down and suddenly the people in the back, which we have a big room, they don't know what you're saying. No. And they're having to look at you and crane their neck or stop their own practice where it's no, stand up, speak and watch. So I know that we definitely try to do that, and I encourage my teachers, the ones that do feel comfortable with hands-on assists, they can. And we also do hands-on assists that are non-touching. So I've definitely taught some of my teachers to be like, hey, you don't actually physically need to touch someone to give them an assist. Right. Yeah, you can touch their mat to be like, can we do here? Or can we, give them more of a visual guide. But yeah, I encourage that. And also some of my teachers that are a bit newer, we haven't done hands-on assist yet because I want them to be really good at not doing class. Yes. And so then they'll stay they'll stay around their mat, but they're still like looking and walking. I'm like, that's fine. That's way better than doing the class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and then it makes people feel welcome.
It does.
Because then you're actually paying attention to them and you're like, oh, you see me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're giving me a little bit of help rather than,
or like you're
I'm disconnected.
Right. Or you're saying things because you're looking at my body and you're seeing that transaction happen. Whereas like you said earlier, you know, you could be saying things that they don't need to hear. You know, it's like inhale.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah. Urdhva Hastasana, reach your arms up over your head. Everyone's hands are up. Why the fuck are you telling them to reach their arms up?
Yeah. Everyone's or like giving a cue just because it's the standard cue. Right. And you're like, okay, but everyone knows this. Yeah. What else can you say? Yes. What else could be helpful or useful? Yeah. Yep. But you don't know that if you're doing it yourself.
And I always tell my students too, because I hear a lot, teachers will say, bend your knee at a 90-degree angle, turn your foot at a 45-degree angle. And I'm like,
what is that?
We don't have a tape measure or a protractor on our mat. I tell that
to my people. I'm like, give them a direction. The front corner, the side of the room.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And that's ownership of their body. And I think that it's beautiful that your studio, your teachers, your kind of mission is to provide that space for people to explore it on their own, the big why yoga. Yeah. And I think that is key. It's not just about the kick your ass in a hot studio and sweating and calories and summer bod bullshit. You know, it's like, it's not that. It's so much deeper than that. So we talked about the off the mat stuff. We talked about, I loved hearing about your studio, especially since you did open right before COVID and you've survived, which is
we survived.
Huge win. The one other question that we like to ask people is, have you ever had like your like samadhi moment, like the blissed out moment in a yoga class, like where at the first time that you hit a pose that you've been like working on forever, or the moment in class where like everything was humming at the right frequency for you?
Yeah, definitely have had a few. There's one that pops out. I'll tie it in a bit of a story. So I was back in Sydney, and this was still when I was doing my very intense everything before I moved over here. But I had a private meditation session with my old teacher, and it was like nothing I can explain. And it seems very silly, so I don't tell many people, but I do believe that I was completely one, right? Yep. With Source, God, universe, and it was so unbelievably blissful. Like I had tears streaming down my face, and it was so special, and I can't even explain it.
When you say, just for me and for our listeners too, when you say like a private meditation session, so like what would they do in that private meditation session?
So the meditation that I did back then, it was very, it was all about using energy. So it was very Shakti based, and my teacher would guide me. I was very connected with her. And so it was all about guiding energy, and it was all about reprogramming your mind. So it was really delving deep. And we used to joke about how, it would be like 5-10 years worth of therapy in like 3 sessions. Yeah. But as I mentioned before, like it wasn't easy. Like it could be very murky and painful sometimes, because you're realizing things that you're like, whoa, gosh, that is how my brain is thinking of this. Or wow, I really pushed down that feeling when I was a child, and I'm realizing how that really affected me. Yeah. And so it was a lot. So I did, I did a lot of that. I could talk for ages on it, but I won't. So it was a very intense session, and a lot of healing wounds session, and some big realizations about, life, and, working on things around my beautiful mother. And so it was big. And then I did it, and I touched God, really. Like that's how I felt. And it was quite incredible. And even my meditation teacher, she afterwards, like we finished, and she had tears down her throat. Sorry, I meant down her eyes. But even she we were both just in sort of awe. She's like, she asked, she's like, did you like touch God? Like what happened? Yeah. Like we both
something
happened. And then, so I was just on another planet, of course. And I ended up leaving, and then I thought, okay, I need to go move my body, right? Because I had just been in this, I don't even know if I drove, I don't remember what happened. Yeah. And so I ended up, I think I went and jumped in the ocean, and then went to a class. And I remember that class, I remember being there, but I just was on another planet. Like everything was seamless. Everything was just felt perfection. Everything was balanced. Everything was easy. Everything was just a light. And I remember that teacher afterwards, who I had done many of her classes. She's fantastic. She actually lives in Bali now. I'm still connected with her sometimes. She's wonderful. Yeah, right. Like, I'm going to visit you.
Exactly.
And she's just like, wow, I don't know what was going on with you, but yeah, there's something going on with you. I'm like, I don't know where I am.
Yeah, you're like, I'm just in bliss.
I'm just walking around in a big sunshine beam.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I've had definitely other times of just being so in the flow and, you know, really connected. And then you're like, wait, my class is finished. What's happening? But that was definitely the one that popped into my brain and my heart just then.
That's a great one. Yeah. And I think that people don't really realize that movement yoga is 1/8 of yoga, and meditation and kind of that connection to your light and to your source is so important. And that's really what it's about. It's like accepting and being okay with your flaws and being able to grow and accept them and accept others too, you know, and be open to that.
Yeah, well, the more that you can for yourself, the more you are with others anyway, is kind of my thought.
Absolutely.
You know, and we are all human, so we're going to make mistakes, or we're going to judge every now and again, or we're not going to understand someone else. But, you know, I think that the more that we can love ourselves and come from that heart-centered space, well, the easier it is to kind of give grace to others, even if you don't understand them or agree with them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think too, like when you think about being with other people and having situations or bad situations or misunderstood situations, right? And just being able to say, okay, let's step back, right? Let's take the emotion out of it for a moment and let's see, like, because I believe that you can connect with everybody on one level, right? Yeah. And that's been my big driver in life, is that I try not to look at someone and judge them for the outer appearance. I try to go, okay, they may not be the same color as me. They may not have the same accent as me, right? They may come from someplace different, but there's something that we can connect on. Yeah. And I think yoga for me has always been that one thing. All right, so wrapping this up, because I know we have busy days.
I know we could talk for hours.
I know, I could, I know. So what do you want others to learn from your stories? What can others take away from the story of yours?
Great question. I think that I would love people to know that no matter where you're at or what's going on or how hard things seem or feel or how hard they are, that just move and breathe and find a way to connect. Now, you know, I'm honest in not everyone feels that yoga is it. Some people find running or weightlifting or swimming, whatever it is. But I think just finding that movement, yoga is fantastic because you're going to move in all different ways. Right. And there's so many options out there for yoga. So if you don't like one, guess what? There's so many more. So keep trying, keep exploring. You're never too old. You're never too big or small. You're never one way or another. But that you can really, I don't want to use the word heal yourself, but you can heal and you can. And if it's not healed, then you can find a new space, and you might love your space, and maybe that's not what you're looking for, but you might just find a little bit of happiness, or you might find a new community or a new place to go that's not your usual. Like whatever it is, like there's something there for you, and it can help in so many ways. And there's never a wrong time. Never a wrong time. I love that. And it's never too late. Right. Yeah. That's so true. Okay, so where can people find you? Yeah, so you haven't even said the name of your studio the entire time we've been talking. I cannot believe that. Go for it. So my studio is Soul Tribes Yoga and Meditation. And I named it that because I wanted people to know that no matter who you are, you can come and find a soul buddy and come and find your tribe with us. So yeah, Soul Tribes, Yoga and Meditation. We're in Spring Branch, which is just a bit north of Memorial here in Houston, Texas. You can find us on social media, and also our website is Soul Tribes HTX for Houston, Texas. So Instagram, Facebook, and then that's our website as well.
Great.
And then, I don't post as many yoga things on my social media, but it's Alexandra Charles _. But yeah, you can see me post about my husband.
Well, congratulations on your newlywedness.
Thank you.
It's very exciting. Yeah. Is he a yogi, by the way?
No, not really. He'll come and support, and he helps me in the studio with some things. So anyone that comes to our studio ends up speaking to him at some point. Yeah, he's wonderful, and he does do classes, but yeah, he doesn't do as much as what you would think he would. Yeah, he loves it when he comes.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. Alexandra, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh,
thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. And we will be back because stories always change, right? There's always a different part of the journey, and we're excited to see kind of where this all takes you.
Awesome, and I'm so happy for both of you. And yeah,
thank you.
Ready to chat at any point.
Absolutely.
Thanks, soul sister.
Thank you. All right. As much as it sucked that you weren't there to participate in the interview with me, I really had the best conversation with Alexandra. She is just an amazing human being. I loved listening to her talk about anything, honestly, because her accent is just so damn sexy. Let's be honest. But I really missed having you there, Mia.
Thanks. Sorry, my cat just bugged the shit out of me.
What is your cat doing?
She just won't leave me the fuck alone. My God, I have to shut my stupid closet door. So you probably heard me like cursing in the background of you introing that. But no, I could totally pick up on that.
We're keeping this, by the way. We're keeping this in.
That's fine. I cannot stand her. But no, I totally picked up on that. It was a super cool interview to listen to on my end. I think this is the first time that we have had a studio owner on the podcast, which is a super cool perspective. We've obviously had a lot of yoga teachers and yoga students would provide a different perspective, but to have an owner and to see how she crafts her space and her, thoughtfulness and intention behind crafting a space was just really beautiful.
I know. And she gets it. She gets it. She knows what it takes to be a successful yoga studio owner. First of all, she opened in COVID, right? So that is a horrible thing, and it's in and of itself. But she knew how, from a business standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I can never say that word right. Entrepreneurial standpoint, she had that kind of internal drive to know that I can do both yoga and business at the same time, which most yoga studios are either run by a business person or a yogi. It's hard to find that like perfect balance of both, right? Because it's capitalizing on yoga, and that's kind of goes against what we believe in as yogis, that we shouldn't be, selling our souls for yoga. We're supposed to be sharing this. It's supposed to be something that everyone can have, but yet we're put in this box of like, okay, money, 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 money.
No, definitely. I think to see that blend is comforting, because I think sometimes you're right. We see studios or we see spaces that are ran solely by yogis or solely by business people, and that balance never occurs. And I think that balance is needed in order for teachers to be appreciated for what they do and what they bring to the table as yogis, but then also for the studio to be successful in something that has to stay open with its lights on and the AC bill paid,
Exactly. And that's where I think our yoga studios, you'll notice like they'll pop up. Some will stay around for a very long time. Some will come in and out. And a lot of it has to do with the value that they put on the teachers, right? Because if you're a yoga studio owner, you can open a studio up quickly, right? It's a big open space. You don't really need much to open a yoga studio. But what you need is reliable, accountable, committed and passionate teachers that are well educated. And if they're not well educated, they are being well educated as you work with them. Because I believe that every yoga teacher deserves that for everything that they put into their trainings.
Well, and also that word that she used for her students of supported it's what I heard that she was ultimately doing for her teachers as well. Like that feedback that she's giving to them, that's live, it's in classes, it's continual, and it's real, right? And in some ways and shapes or form, it's interesting. It's definitely around her preferences for a studio, because I think, you know, there were some things where I was like, wow, that's different from what I've had other studio owners tell me. And that's up to her, you know, as
What
it
were some of the
relates to,
things that you kind of picked up on? Because I had a couple that I thought were really cool and interesting.
of course. So even just the down to I personally liked, and I will be taking, can you say something nice to yourself here in Tadasana? You know, like that she encourages teachers to have these moments of self-connection in the class is huge and something I've never heard of. But then also as it relates to, I think she was talking about operational command and actually moving away from that, when so many, I think, studios and teacher trainers are pushing us towards it. Like that was a very interesting dichotomy and an interesting difference. And then I think also this week I took a yoga class with a friend, and she was telling me, she's from New York, that the way that she picks her classes is based on teachers demoing, actually. Like she really likes it when she can look up and see a teacher doing the flow, which is funny because I mean, I personally will not do a class with you.
Yeah.
And Alexandra said the same, like, you are not taking this class. It's not for you. And then it's interesting because she was like, and so then you're walking around the room and the students feel as if they're being seen and they're being supported.
Yes.
And I think it's probably those that end up sticking around feel that way, but there are going to be those students who have the inverse and are flooding another studio or another class because that teacher is demoing the whole time. And so I just think it really got me thinking about intentional space and setting that community and the expectations and the boundaries of those four walls of what the community can anticipate.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's so cool because she talks about, like, I wanted it to be a very comfortable space. It's not going to be a space that's going to be super crowded. Like, she's very intentional about that. Like, she wants people to have the ability to not feel crunched in and tight. And I was actually having this conversation with my nephew Tucker, because he and my sister-in-law and Mallory and I went and took a yoga class because we're down here for Thanksgiving in Pensacola Beach, Florida. And we went to a lovely little studio. And during that class, we were talking, and he's like, I can't stand it when the mats are like, centimeters apart. And I'm worried about like whipping sweat on somebody next to me. And I was like, I get it. But some people love those classes when they're super tight. Right. And so I think it's really interesting because what Alexander's showing us is that your style of yoga can be for a multitude of different people, right? You may get some people that really like the fact that it's not a heated studio, that it's a neutral temperature, right? That they don't bring in a lot of the oming, a lot of that kind of more traditional yoga pieces, right? Which I don't really disagree with the oming or not oming. I think it kind of depends on the mood of the person or the studio or the space that you're in. But the fact that she uses things like sound bowls for healing and like teaches teachers how to teach yoga, like that's the kind of people that I want to surround myself with in yoga, is that are there to make other people get brighter and better and higher vibrations and all that, amazing woo-woo-y shit that us yoga teachers always talk about. But her support for her teachers is critical. I mean, Mia, you and I have worked in a couple studios together now. The first studio we worked at was totally, in my opinion, on board with a teacher focused studio. But then something happened and it changed.
I was going to say it started that way. I mean, onboarding, Adrienne and I met because when I onboarded to the studio, she was assigned as my mentor teacher. I came on, she got me familiar with the studio, the expectations, the brand. And we spent multiple weekends together, and I probably would have spent more, but she said, no, it's time for you to start teaching. And so we spent, I think it was like 2 or 3 weekends together, not full weekends, but a couple hours on a Saturday together, where we kind of just went over what I could expect from the studio as a teacher. Right. And what the studio was expecting of me as a teacher, because I had been there as a student for well over a year. And so that's how we met. And in those first few months of being there as a teacher, we had, a teacher gathering with teachers from the studio and outside the studio. We had a photo shoot. We had a media day. We had, format training. We had continuing education with yin and restorative yoga, free to the yoga teachers. Like, this was all in my first few months there. And
it was like a dream.
Yeah, it was very communal. It was very much what I thought I was stepping into too, right? It was embodying what I understood the studio to be. And things did change, right? I think it's because also leadership changed.
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes down to the intention of a studio, because when those things changed, Adrienne and I were both there and familiar with leadership. And I was a manager at the time. And I said, look, it is okay to be an X type of studio. If X is corporate, if X is challenges, if X is, glitter and t-shirts and glitz and glam, right?
Or if it's all like woo-woo-y or whatever, right?
Right.
Like
But
heated or not heated.
Well, and also, but what we were leaning into was a corporate model.
Yeah.
And I said, it's okay to be a corporate model, but you have to acknowledge that what we were before was a community model. And so you're going to find your corporate model teachers, but you're not going to be able to hold on to your community model teachers because they have a different expectation of where they want to teach. And that was something they weren't willing to acknowledge or reconcile, and it didn't work.
No. And I think watching it go from what we had hoped it would be to what it became and then ended up, going out of business, it's just tragic, because it was a space where people could be open and free, but still had like this very kind of centralized feel to it of what we were about, and I think that if studio owners are listening to this, or if teachers are listening to this, really think about what kind of community do you want to be a part of? Where do you want to teach yoga, right? Because me and I teach in a corporate facility right now that's a franchise, and that has its challenges in and of itself. So you have to understand, just like you would get any other job, is like, what bullshit are you willing to put up with and what bullshit are you not? Right.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's what Alexandra spoke really well to. And I don't even know if that's necessarily what she was trying to speak to, but in that she knows what she wants to offer. She's clear about it. She's clear about it with her students, and she's clear about it with her staff, right? They know that this is a space that is neutral, right? When we think about, that's something that resonated with me. Like, I don't know if she used the word neutral, but neutral from religion, neutral from like favoritism, neutral from really what's, I think, almost like pop culture in yoga, right? Hot yoga, pop music, things like this. And here's the thing, hot yoga, pop music, whatever, very, very popular. And there are getting people that gravitate towards it. But creating something that is different and intentional, and that the boundaries of, people are going to come to it also. People like to know what they expect, like to know what they can expect. And that's what they can do in her space for a different intention, a different space. And I agree. I think as teachers, as studio owners, as yogis, you have to know, what am I looking for? And I think that's sometimes what's tough when you're new to yoga, is you go to one space and you're like, this was not for me. And you don't know necessarily why, it just didn't land. And that's really tough to say, well, let me try again. Let me drop another $30 or $45 or however much it may be to try a different studio. But if a studio is clear in what they are delivering and why and for who, then you are going to find one that lands, hopefully. Right. But I think where studios and teachers struggle is they try to do too many things. Yes. I want to be the teacher that wants to kick your ass and tell you, drop your shit and go to hell and fuck that bullshit. Right. But I also want you to feel safe in my space. And both can't really happen for me, right? No. Like, I don't feel safe around the teacher that's like, fuck all this bullshit. Hey, let's have a good time.
Yeah, no. But I'm a cursor, but I wouldn't go into a yoga studio and teach a multi-level or regular class and curse throughout it. Like that's just not my style, even though I curse all the time outside.
I curse constantly. You'll never see me curse in a yoga class.
No. And that's just one thing that I just find that it's disrespectful. I feel like every once in a while I may say like shit if I mess up or something, but I'm never like telling someone like, get your fucking ass down on the ground. Like I would never, ever use that kind of language in a yoga studio. It's unprofessional. We are business women. We are business people as yogis, right? If we're a yoga teacher and we're in a yoga studio, we're representing our brand, which is us, right? We are our brand.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, that can be your brand, but you can't expect to be that brand. And then like you have to lean in, you have to know that's your brand. Yeah. If your brand is cursing in your class and playing music that has cursing and whatever it may be, then you have to know that that is who you are, and it's going to offend some people. And then at the same time, if you're the restorative teacher, you're the slow flow, you're calm or whatever, that some people are going to come to your class and be bored. Yeah. And I think the reality is we try to do too many things to serve too many people. Like I know you said like yoga is for all. Yeah. And that's something that right, we all say it. But here's the thing. Yeah. And here's the thing. Yoga is for all. Absolutely. My yoga is not for all. The class that I'm offering you is not for all. This studio is not for all. This class is not for all. Now, there is some sort of yoga for everybody, but not everybody is going to like this one particular corner of yoga. And so I think that's what I am really thinking a lot about is intentionality for studios, for teachers, and for practitioners.
Right. And I find it really interesting too. Like I've read so much online about, finding the perfect yoga studio, new student, someone interested in yoga. You get online and you read all this crap and it's like the studios around us change the names, right? I'm doing a slow flow. Okay. I'm doing a heated flow. I'm doing a power flow. I'm doing a vinyasa flow, like all of these different descriptors for classes. And I think that can ward people off. They don't want to try something that they don't understand exactly what it's about. Vinyasa, people say, in class, sometimes you'll say, flow your vinyasa, right? When it should be chaturanga instead of vinyasa. Vinyasa is to place in a special way. That's the definition of it. So instead of saying vinyasa, that confusing the hell out of everybody, just call the damn pose and move on. Like that's what I liked about Alexandra was that she, like we talked about, very clear in her brand. She's got semi-set sequences. She has a neutral space. She's got non-heated, no music. And then she does the sound baths as well. And she's been thriving even through COVID. And one of the things we're talking about early on in her episode, kind of getting into how she first started in yoga, right? She talked about how she was a professional dancer. She had a pretty horrible work-life balance because she worked a lot of times at night, right, as a dancer, and then going out late, clubbing, being in clubs, being in the nightlife, and not being able to find that balance in her life. She was working super hard. It's not like she was just showing up to work at night. She was dancing, she was trying to perform at the best level of her athleticism and in her body. So when she first found yoga and finding meditation and breath work and Kundalini and Bikram, she was able to find ways to set up boundaries for her own energetic health. She was able to then say, okay, I'm going to do yoga more. This is all going to drop off. And then she did the same thing when she built her studio. She set healthy boundaries. Hey, I'm not doing teacher trainings 4 times a year. It's my energy. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to give crappy teacher trainings. Like I can't tell you, out of all the years, I've never heard a yoga studio owner say, I'm not going to run a bunch of teacher trainings every year. They all want it because it's like this instant cash influx, but she's in it for the long haul. She's in it for the quality over quantity. She's in it for the best reasons. And that I think is why she is going to always stay successful in Houston with her studio.
Right. No, I think it's a beautiful thing to witness. Would love to emulate it. Would love to have those communities here in San Antonio. And I do think we have it in certain spaces,
Absolutely.
I think also you and I are actively working towards making it, right? I don't see any community that we walk into and don't try to leave it a little bit better than how we found it.
Yep. And I feel like that's the biggest thing is that teachers out there, if you're feeling like you're in a rut in a studio, if you're feeling like you're not able to kind of find your own voice, get out there and have more conversations with other yoga teachers because we all are going through different things, just like everyone does in their jobs. But when you're having a hard time kind of feeling like you fit in or you're trying too hard to fit in where you're finding your kind of energy is lacking, right? Or you're dumping too much into something that doesn't feel authentic to you, then talk to other teachers, move around, try other yoga studios. If you're a yoga teacher and you're not practicing at multiple different studios as much as you can, get out there and do that. That's crucial. And let me just give a big shout out to Alexandra's studio. It's called Soul Tribes Yoga and Meditation. It's in Spring Ranch, Houston, Texas area. And you can follow them online. It's Soul Tribe HTX. And I cannot wait to get back in and see her again and be able to take her class and see the studio. We didn't get a chance to do it on our quick trip before. But what's great about it is that, you know, being able to connect with yogis all over the place now and share these stories, we're finding a lot of commonalities. We're finding a lot of things that we all are benefiting from by practicing the big Y yoga.
Definitely. Beautiful shout out.
Alexandra.
Thank you. Alexandra, next time we're in Houston, we're going to be there. Adrienne, thanks for letting me listen into this episode.
Thanks for letting me steer the bus on this one. It took a little different turn, you know, which I think is interesting because we learned about how she got into yoga and then how she was able to take it to others in a way that is successful from a, you know, leadership perspective, from a community perspective, and from a business standpoint. So she is definitely one that I can't wait to catch up with again.
Beautiful. Yogis, as always, thank you for listening. If you were a fan of this episode, send it to someone you know, share the episode. It helps us grow as a podcast. And like, follow, subscribe, leave us a sweet, sweet review. And if you're interested in being on the podcast, you can now check out our show notes. There's a link to reach out to us. And then, of course, you can message us on Instagram at Yoga Changed and email us yogachanged@gmail.com. Thanks, yogis.
Thanks, yogis.